So today's video is a little bit different. I put together 25 of my favorite decor DIYs and ideas, everything from designer-inspired details to thrifted finds, to pieces I've been using around my home. And what I've realized over time, it's not always the big changes that makes the biggest difference. It's those smaller details that start to make everything feel more pulled together. So if you're looking for ideas you can actually use, things that aren't complicated but really do make an impact, I think you're going to get a lot out of this one. Now grab your coffee, get comfy, and let's dive in. So one detail I notice in upscale homes are beautiful sconces, and you see them everywhere in brands like Magnolia, Our House, Ballard Designs, and CB2. But honestly, finding something like that at a thrift store, especially a pair that's in good shape, is surprisingly tricky. So instead of hunting for actual sconces, I started looking at things a little differently. Just anything with an interesting shape or structure that I could imagine turning into a sconce. At first, I was picking up things like platters and trays, trying to picture how they would work, but nothing really felt right. And then I came across these candle holders for 99 cents. Second I flipped one over, I could immediately see the potential. The votive holders became really sculptural, almost architectural in their form. It felt custom, like something you find in a designer space, not something sitting on a thrift store shelf. And honestly, for $2, it felt like a no-risk project. If it didn't work, it wasn't a big deal, and I wasn't ruining something expensive. That's one of the things I love about thrifting and Dollar Tree finds. You can experiment a little more and just try things. So when I got home, I decided to go for it and see if I could bring that vision to life. I took a couple of metal candlesticks from Dollar Tree that I had in my stash and bent off the cups to use as the candle holder on the new sconces. Then I used Gorilla Glue epoxy to bond the two pieces together. This stuff is really strong and worked perfectly and is needed for the metal-to-metal adhesion. I've also heard good things about the Dollar Tree epoxy, and I may try that next time. Now after letting them dry overnight, I used the same epoxy to attach the D-rings to the back. And in hindsight, I probably should have done that first before attaching the front pieces. It would have made things a little easier, but it still worked out. I just leaned them carefully against a towel and a piece of wood while everything set, and they held perfectly. One of my favorite things about these is that I didn't even need to paint them. The original finish already had that slightly aged, high-end look, and the black cups blended in seamlessly. And the design is what really makes them stand out. It's all of those circle shapes that gives it that custom, almost vintage European feel. And for 99 cents, this is exactly what I meant by those small, intentional details. Something unexpected, a little creative, that completely elevates the space. This next piece was inspired by Magnolia tabletop media stand. The richness of the wood against the metal makes it feel high-end and timeless, but even on sale it's $67, and I knew right away this was something we could recreate using Dollar Tree supplies. So I headed to Dollar Tree and picked up one of their crafter square wood pieces, and then I went over to the kitchen aisle and grabbed their metal napkin holders. These are one of those items I see in every Dollar Tree. But while I was in store, I kind of played around with the layout just to make sure the proportions would work. Once I saw it, I knew this was going to come together. When I got home, I laid everything out again and tucked the one napkin holder into the other to recreate the center, very similar to the Magnolia version. I kept it that way when I sprayed them so they wouldn't scratch each other when I put them together. So now that I was settled on the design, I started with the wood. I gave it a really good sanding because I wanted it to feel smooth and finished, not rough or craft-like. Then I stained it using a water-based wax. I originally used a gel stain, but I didn't love the tone. It wasn't rich enough. I wanted something deeper, warmer, more in line with that Magnolia look. While that was drying, I took the napkin holders and some wood beads outside and spray painted them using a gold metallic I already had. Normally I would use champagne bronze, which is a little softer and more muted, but I was completely out that day, and honestly, this gold ended up surprising me. It came out really beautiful, a little richer, a little more bold, and I actually think I like it even better for this piece. Once everything was fully dried, I flipped the wood piece over and hot glued the wooden beads to the bottom to create little feet. Then, using the same Gorilla Glue epoxy I used for the sconces, I carefully attached the metal pieces to the base. I just took my time with this part, making sure everything was aligned and being really careful not to get glue where it didn't belong. And what I love about this piece is not just how it looks, but how functional it is. It's surprisingly sturdy. It held my laptop, my tablet, my phone, no problem at all. You could absolutely use this as a media stand or a charging station on a desk. And the craziest part, this whole thing only cost me $6.25. It's not just pretty, it's actually really functional and something I'll use all the time. It's also super versatile. Here are just a few ideas of ways you can use it and style it. But what really makes a space feel high-end isn't just the statement pieces. It's the small, intentional details that pulls everything together and makes a home truly feel elevated. And the best part, some of the easiest ones come straight from Dollar Tree. With just a little paint and thoughtful styling, you can turn them into high-end looking pieces. So I wanted to show you a couple of super quick finds that I simply styled to give that soft, collected Magnolia feel. These are things you can still grab now, no heavy crafting required, just a quick spray paint and placement. For both the candle snuffer and the magnifying glass, I used champagne bronze by Rust-Oleum, and for the added detail on the magnifying glass, a rook piece from the Dollar Tree chess and checker set. And that's it. These pieces bring such a nice, curated, vintage touch and can really complete a vignette for just a couple of dollars. This one was a really simple flip, but I love how it turned out. You see, I had a brass pitcher I thrifted a couple of years ago. It had been holding lavender in my kitchen. But when I saw how Magnolia styled a similar pitcher with red flowers, I remembered some red stems I'd picked up on my last Goodwill bins trip for just 30 cents. Now paired with warm brass, the red really pops, and it has this unexpectedly upscale, cozy feel. Sometimes it just takes seeing the things you already own in a new way and repurposing them to make a little statement. This is the kind of small accent that quietly elevates a shelf or a tabletop without feeling over the top. For this next one, I want to focus on wreaths because high-end stores often style wreaths all year long, and a eucalyptus wreath doesn't feel seasonal at all. It works in any room, any time of the year. And you see versions of this in so many designer spaces. And it's a simple way to bring that collected, elevated look into your home. I actually have been missing a wreath since the holidays, and I wanted one that felt fresh but flexible. Last year, I found a grapevine wreath at the thrift store, and it's been hanging out in my garage waiting for the right moment. Recently, I came across a eucalyptus stems at the bins, which cost me about $1. I also had a few other stems on hand that I thought I might use, but in the end, I kept it simple. At first, I was going to use zip ties to attach everything, but I decided on floral wire instead. That way, I can easily take it apart later if I want to refresh it or tuck in some seasonal accents. I started by laying out the larger pieces first to see where everything would go and make sure the spacing felt balanced and I had enough. I paid attention to the direction of the leaves, making sure the fronts faced outward and everything was going in the same direction. Then I added a slightly different bunch to give the wreath more depth and dimension. One of the things I love about eucalyptus is how versatile it is. You could easily tuck in a few pops of color depending on the season. Easter eggs in the spring, bright flowers for summer, sunflowers for fall. It's a little way to keep the wreath feeling fresh all year without having to start from scratch. Honestly, I thought this DIY might feel too simple to show, but I really love how it turned out. It's a small, elegant accent that adds life and texture to a wall, door, or shelf. And it's proof that a few well-chosen pieces can completely change the feel of a space. This next piece is a little different because it's actually something I've had for years, but seeing similar ones pop up in high-end stores made me want to take another look at mine and give it a refresh. Lately, I've been noticing decorative mailboxes showing up on sites like Magnolia and Pottery Barn, especially in those warm brass tones, and it reminded me of this one I picked up at a flea market probably 25 years ago. I've never actually used it outside. I've always styled it inside my home, usually near the front door as a decorative piece. More recently, I've been using it in my kitchen to hold little things for my orchids like plant food, clips, that kind of thing. It's one of those pieces that's surprisingly versatile. If I had the space, I would even use it in the bathroom to hold toiletries and hand towels, especially with the hooks, but for now, it works perfectly where I have it. Mine was originally silver, and after seeing those warmer brass versions, I felt like it needed a little update. So I took some gold paint, mixed a bit of burnt umber to tone it down, give it more of that aged brass look, then brushed it on and let it dry. And that simple change made such a difference. It still has that same character I've always loved, but for now it feels a little more current and blends in beautifully with everything else. So I recently came across this beautiful antique mirror from McGee Co, and I just love how she captures that antique feel with the aged mirror and brass, but it's $98. And when I saw this little $1.25 mirror at Dollar Tree, I thought we can absolutely recreate that look. The first thing I did was take the mirror apart, which is actually really easy. There are just 3 small screws on the back and the mirror pops right out. Then I gave the frame a quick makeover using Rub and Buff in antique gold to get that warm vintage tone. The tricky part was antiquing the mirror itself. I tried one of those internet hacks where you spray water on the mirror and then spray paint over it and dab off to create an aged effect, but honestly, the effect ended up looking more Halloween spooky than antique to me. So I scraped the paint off, and here's a little tip that a lot of people don't know. You can remove paint from glass and mirrors really easily using a razor blade. It comes right off, and it's actually kind of therapeutic. So after trying this technique twice and still not loving the results, I went back to an old school hack that I've used before. I dipped a toothbrush in paint and lightly flicked it onto the mirror to create those tiny speckles that mimic aged glass. And that did the trick. Once the mirror was back in the frame, it looked so close to the original, but for only $1.25 instead of $98. So here's the McGee Co inspiration, the little Dollar Tree mirror we started with, and the finished look. But the next one proves you don't always need to DIY something. Sometimes you just need to reimagine it. So lately, I've been seeing vintage fairy lamps everywhere on TikTok and Instagram, pretty much all over social media. The problem is, now that everyone is looking for them, they're almost impossible to find at thrift stores. And when you do see them online, they're selling for anywhere from $70 to $200, which is honestly kind of crazy. So when I was thrifting at my local thrift store, I spotted this Malcasa crystal bowl and a tiny dessert bowl. And I immediately thought if we flipped these over, they look like lampshades and they would work perfectly for little fairy lamps. The dessert bowl was 50 cents. The Malcasa bowl was $2, and using a couple candlestick holders from my stash and some LED candles, this little lamp came to life. I even played around with a few different base options before styling it, just to see what worked best. And if anything was wobbly, I just added some space tape from the Dollar Tree, but you could also use museum putty. And just imagine a table with a whole collection of these glowing, a dozen little fairy lamps, all made just by reimagining a couple of thrifted bowls. And wait until you see what I turned a thrifted salad plate into. But before we jump into this next one, I just want to acknowledge the recent passing of Victoria MacKenzie-Childs. Her whimsical designs have inspired so many makers and decorators over the years, and she will be truly missed. Recently, when I was out thrifting at my local thrift store, I came across this blue and white checkered plate for just $1. The pattern immediately reminded me of MacKenzie-Childs, and I knew right away I could make the perfect little clock for my kitchen. But of course, you could do this with any plate that fits your own style. But this project almost got expensive really quickly. In order to drill the hole through the ceramic, you need a diamond drill bit. And when I went to Home Depot, they wanted about $16 for just one drill bit. Then, when I checked Michael's for the clock mechanism itself was around $11. Thankfully, Amazon came through. I found a set of 11 diamond drill bits for just about $6 and a clock kit that came with 4 clock mechanisms for around $8 to $10. So even though there was a small upfront cost, I now have enough supplies to make several clocks for just a few dollars each. The tricky part was figuring out the right size for the hole in the clock mechanism to fit through the plate. I actually asked AI to double check the measurements, and it turns out the drill bit I chose was just too small. So I used what they call the wobble method. After drilling the initial hole while spraying water, I gently moved the drill around the edges to slowly widen it enough for the clock mechanism to fit through. And this little center shaft right here on the screen is an important part to measure, because if it's too short, the clock hands won't fit properly once the plate is in place. Now, once I had the hole wide enough, the rest of the clock went together surprisingly easily. I trimmed the clock hands just a bit with scissors so they would clear the edge of the plate and move smoothly. And considering that an original MacKenzie-Childs clock can run $100 or more, I'm pretty happy with how my thrift store version turned out. And this could actually make such a great gift idea too. You could pick up almost any plate at the thrift store, maybe one with roosters for that rooster lover, or a floral plate for Mother's Day, and turn it into a really personal little clock. And here's the $1 thrifted plate. Here's the ironic part. The day after I found the blue and white thrifted plate, I stopped at Dollar Tree and could not believe it when I saw these MacKenzie-Child inspired plates sitting on display. They're actually beautiful just the way they are, but of course I started thinking, what else could we do with them? And since I already had those diamond drill bits from the clock project, I decided to turn the salad plate and the dinner plate into a little tiered tray, thanks to my daughter-in-law's suggestion. And Amazon sells the hardware kit for just about $7. And when you look at the real MacKenzie-Childs tiered trays, they're absolutely gorgeous, but they are much more detailed with the crystal top and raised base. So recreating an exact dupe would be pretty difficult, but this gives us a similar look for a fraction of the price. One detail I really wanted to add was that signature gold rim, so I used a metallic gold paint from Dollar Tree to trace around the edges of the plate. It actually looked beautiful. Then I tried the trick I had seen online where you bake the plate in the oven to help set the paint. But when I took it out and handled it, the paint still came off on my hands. So that clearly wasn't going to work. Instead, I sealed the rim with a clear spray sealer, which locked the color in really nicely. So now it's technically not food safe. But since this is a tiered tray, you can always use little doilies or liners if you want to serve something on it. And once everything was assembled, it turned out really charming. And the next project started with a piece I almost left behind at the thrift store. I wasn't even sure what it was. A vase, maybe a lampshade, but I knew it had potential. So I had been seeing people on social media taking different vessels and turning them into decorative tissue holders. And when I spotted this piece at the thrift store, I thought it could be perfect for my family room. It was only $2, and although it was a little rough looking, I could immediately picture how it might work. There was actually another vase there that would have been beautiful too, but that one was $4, so I went with the cheaper option. And honestly, that's the fun part about projects like this. There are so many vessels out there that could work if you want to recreate something similar. Now, once I got home, I gave the whole piece a coat of heirloom white by Behr, which gave me the background to start the transformation. Then I took some toile decorative napkins from my stash and used my homemade Mod Podge mixture of glue and water to decoupage them onto the surface. I didn't feel I needed to seal it afterwards because the glue mixture does a pretty good job on its own, and this piece isn't going to be used for anything wet. Although you could make it into a beautiful vase for flowers as well, but I really like the idea of using it as a tissue holder for the family room. All you have to do is take a small stack of tissues, turn them on their side, and then flip them over so they dispense properly from the top. And just like that, we have a beautiful little vessel to hold our tissues. So here's the thrift store piece we started with, and here's how it turned out. The next project is one of those thrift store pieces I see all the time, and I don't think people always know what to do with them. And I found this little egg holder for just 50 cents, and the moment I saw it, I knew it would make the perfect propagation station for my kitchen windowsill. I've been wanting to start a few new plants, and this seemed like such a fun way to do it. The only thing I needed to do was to grab some glass test tubes, which you can also find online as propagation tubes. Once again, Amazon to the rescue. You can get a set of 5 tubes for around $10, which I think is super reasonable. All I had to do was place the tubes into the egg holder, add a little dish underneath to catch any water, and suddenly the simple thrift store piece became a really unique propagation station. And here's how it looks on the windowsill. It's just the little European cottage vibe that I love. The next piece is this thrifted vase that I thought we could transform into one of those French glazed pottery style vases you see at places like Pottery Barn. The shape really caught my eye because of the raised section near the top. Felt perfect for creating that two-tone glazed look you often see on those pieces. The vase itself was $3, but the color wasn't right and it had a decorative pattern in the pottery that we needed to hide. So to smooth everything out, I mixed together powdered joint compound and a little water until it was about the consistency of frosting, and then basically spread it all over the vase to cover the design. Once that dried, I sanded down any rough spots and started working on the bottom section using a few different brown acrylic paints, just dabbing them on with a damp paper towel to build up that aged pottery look. For the top, I wanted to recreate that olive green glaze like the inspiration piece. I won't take you through the whole process because when I stepped back and looked at it, the whole thing looked like an eggplant to me. So I thought maybe it was just the color and tried switching to blue instead, but somehow I still couldn't unsee the vegetable. At that point, I decided the safest option was to reset the top section completely, so I painted over it with a soft beige base. Then I went back to the same brown tones from the bottom, just slightly darker this time, and finally it started to bring the piece together. Then I needed to add those drip marks like the inspiration piece, so with some water-based dark wax that I watered down, I started dabbing on drips with a paintbrush, taking off areas that were too dark with a paper towel and blending others together to get the look I was going for. Once everything was dry, I sealed the top with a gloss acrylic top coat paint from Dollar Tree to mimic that French glazed look. And that was the moment I finally felt happy with how it turned out. And now it has that soft French pottery look I was hoping for. This next project actually came from a little bit of necessity. I wanted a phone stand for my bathroom so that when I'm getting ready in the morning, I can watch videos. But of course, I couldn't just be functional, it had to be pretty too. So I had in my stash a Dollar Tree mini easel with a tiny canvas that was originally $1.25, and I started wondering if it might actually hold my phone. When I tested it, it worked perfectly. But of course, I couldn't leave it as plain as raw wood. So I took it outside, gave it a quick coat of spray paint to create a nice background color. Then I remembered I had these pink toile napkins from Amazon in my stash, and I started decoupaging them on to the front and around the sides using my homemade Mod Podge. And before I knew it, the whole piece was starting to look like something straight out of Lily Pulitzer. I intentionally left the back of the stand white so it would feel a little cleaner and more designer. And now it's the perfect little spot to hold my phone while I'm getting ready in the morning. Just a simple Dollar Tree easel turned into a pretty and functional phone stand. For my next project, I had to go back to the Dollar Tree plates. I wanted to see if I could recreate the MacKenzie-Childs iconic black and white courtly check pattern. And since I already had the clock parts and drill bits from the last project, turning one into another clock felt like the perfect way to try it. And it's going to make a great gift for my friend who loves MacKenzie-Childs. So with some black acrylic paint, I carefully painted over the blue checkered pattern. Once that was dry, I went in with some white watered down paint for shading like the inspiration. And for the finishing touch, I went around the rim with the same metallic gold paint marker like on the pink plates. One thing I would definitely recommend, if you try something like this, spray the plate with a sealer before you start drilling the hole for the clock. I learned the hard way because I ended up scratching a couple of the paint squares and had to go back and redo them. But I did spray it with gloss sealer to mimic the high gloss pieces I've admired so much. And once everything was sealed and dry, I used the clock mechanism from the earlier project to turn the plate into a functioning clock. And the detail that really made it feel MacKenzie-Childs to me was the little red second hand, which adds that perfect pop of color. And I love how it turned out. A little Dollar Tree plate turned into a MacKenzie-Childs inspired clock. This next DIY was inspired by a framed purse I spotted on Etsy. At the time, it was listed for around $700 and it has actually since sold. And when I saw it, it immediately made me think of this beaded sequins purse of my grandmother's that I've had tucked away. I love the idea of turning something like that into a piece of art, so I wanted to see if I could recreate it using what I already had. I thought about it for a few days, especially how I wanted to build the shadow box. I knew I didn't want to start completely from scratch. A couple of years ago, I had picked up this frame from Goodwill for $3.99, and it had been sitting in my stash. I had always loved the detail and the carvings. I knew eventually I'd find the right use for it, and I felt like this was the perfect project. The original inspiration had a hinged door, and I did consider going that route, but I really wanted to work with things I already had on hand. So I ended up using this shadow box style Christmas decor piece I had picked up from Aldi. It was originally $14, but I had gotten it 90% off, so it was about $1.40, and the size was exactly what I needed. I started removing the wood bead detail from the front using a heat gun and a scraper, and it came off pretty easily. Then I needed to create a new backing to cover the original holiday design. So I used the cardboard back from the frame along with some spray adhesive and leftover fabric, which worked perfectly. To finish it up, I folded the fabric to the back and secured it with duct tape. Once that was done, I just used some E6000 to put the fabric covered back into the shadow box. Next was updating the frame itself. The detail was beautiful, but the color made it feel a little cheap, almost plastic looking. So I went in with some gold rub and buff and it completely transformed it. It honestly looked like a totally different piece. And once everything was dry, I used E6000 to the shadow box and attached the frame. Last step was figuring out how to hang the purse, and I ended up using a small wood knob from my stash. I gave it a bit of rub and buff as well, and then once it dried, I attached it using E6000. And just like that, it turned into such a special piece ready to hang. And this is one of those projects where it really doesn't have to be a purse. You could frame anything that means something to you. I've even framed a special 45 record before. It's really about taking something personal and turning it into something you can see and enjoy every day. And it also makes such a thoughtful gift. And sadly, the camera really doesn't do this one justice. The way the purse sparkles in person is stunning, and I'm so happy that I could take a sentimental piece and put it on display in such a beautiful way. This next piece is one of those $1.25 plastic mirrors from Dollar Tree. I'm not even sure it's for adults, and I really wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, but I had an idea. And I picked up the silver one because the mirror itself looked the best. But honestly, the color doesn't matter since it's going to be painted anyway. I had to give it a quick coat of chalk paint first because the rub and buff didn't want to adhere directly to the plastic on this one. And once it was dry, I used antique gold rub and buff to give it that antique finish. And I have to say, I was really surprised by this one. It ended up looking like one of those vintage mirrors you'd find tucked away at your grandmother's, just soft, a little worn, and really charming. It's one of those pieces that's small and unexpected, but adds a really nice layer when you're styling. As you saw with the frame purse, you can really turn just about anything into something special by framing it. One thing I've gone back to again and again are Dollar Tree canvases. I've used them in different areas of my home for years now, and they're such an easy way to add some interest or color on a budget. And if you get tired of it, it's no big deal. And it doesn't have to stop there. I've also used pages from a book and even some from Dollar Tree. Another trend is framing paper and even wallpaper. You could even frame wrapping paper from a gift or just one you love, or special gift bags, especially this time of year with Mother's Day coming up. There are some really pretty options out there, and they can look surprisingly high-end once they're framed. And I recently actually came across this photo album at Dollar Tree, and what caught my eye was the cover. It had this really beautiful blue and white pattern that's so popular right now. And it's just a piece of paper. So I popped it into a frame I already had, which was also from Dollar Tree, and just like that, it completed the grouping. Then I decided to try framing a couple of designer bags I had in my stash, just to see how they would look, and I ended up loving both options for completely different reasons. There's just something about taking these everyday or unexpected pieces and putting them on display. It's a great way to bring your personality to a space. And as a thank you for being here, I'm going to be giving away the framed Tiffany bag pieces in a couple of weeks. All the details will be in the description box and the pinned comment, and I'll be announcing the winner through my email newsletter, so make sure you're signed up if you'd like to enter. So I recently spotted these little felt birds at Dollar Tree. They came in a few spring colors, and what caught my attention right away was that they actually had a bit of weight to them. They immediately reminded me of those artisan birds from Pottery Barn, the ones that are carved from clay and sell for around $60. Now these were definitely smaller and a lot simpler to start with, but they had that same quiet sculptural feel to them, and that's what I usually notice. Not something that looks exactly the same, but that it gives you a similar look or feeling to build from. I started with a few coats of white acrylic paint just to completely cover the pink color, and then I went in with a softer antique white and began pouncing to give it the variation of color like the inspiration. At first it was working, but then it started to feel too flat and blotchy, so I switched directions a bit. I took a very watered down gray paint, dabbed it on lightly, and then wiped it back with paper towel. The layering of the paint is what really changed everything. It softened the finish and gave it more of that subtle variation you see in stone. This piece is one of those small details that doesn't stand out on its own, but when you place it into a vignette, it just finishes everything around it in a really quiet, simple way. This next piece is a little bit different, but it's probably one of the most functional things I worked on. I actually found this coat rack sitting in my neighbor's garbage. It was missing one of the rungs, it was dirty and had a large sticker on it, and had been clearly sitting outside for a while. But the shape was still really good, and pieces like this are surprisingly useful if you think about them a little differently. So I brought it home, removed the broken piece, gave everything a really good clean, and then went in with a couple of coats of black spray paint. I also sealed it to make sure it could handle a little moisture. I ended up using it in my bathroom as a towel holder. I don't have a good place to install anything on the wall in there, so this was such an easy solution, and it's completely renter friendly. But what I really love about pieces like this is how versatile they are. You could use it for scarves, for handbags, even in a kid's room for hats, or jewelry in a bedroom. You can move it around your home and use it in different ways depending on what you need. It's just a good reminder that sometimes the best pieces aren't the ones you go out and buy, they're the ones you almost pass by. And if you've ever wondered how I actually find pieces like this when I'm out thrifting, I thought I'd show you a little bit of that too. This one I spotted from aisles away. You see, vintage oval frames are actually pretty hard to come by, so when you see one, it's usually worth taking a closer look. Right away, I could see the old glue where the picture was, and when I flipped it over, you could really see its age just by the way it was put together. Those are the kind of details I always pay attention to, and for $1.99, it went straight into my cart. When I got home, I gave it a good clean with some furniture oil and decided to keep things simple. I styled it with a few of my mom's and grandmother's brooches, and it ended up feeling pretty special. And this tapered candle holder had such a nice rustic feel to it. It really reminded me of something you'd see at Pottery Barn. Pieces like these are pretty easy to work into different spaces, but I didn't have a need for it, so I left it behind. This is one of those pieces that really makes you stop for a second. The shape, especially the X base, feels very McGee Co, and at first glance it definitely reads high-end, but when I looked underneath, it was actually from Target, part of the Studio McGee line, which honestly makes sense, and it's something I could have easily reupholstered, but I had to remind myself what I actually needed for that space, and I really wanted something with storage. So even though it was a great piece and a good price, it just didn't make sense for me to bring it home. And I always have to stop and admire cottagecore pieces and see where they are made. There is something about picking them up and turning them over. A lot of them have that older European feel to them, and even if I don't have a place for them right now, I still like to take a second and consider them, because you never know when an idea will strike. Another cute find was this vintage Avon mallard trinket dish for $4. I could just picture it on a stack of books next to a candle holding matches. It's those small, charming details that make a space feel curated. At the same thrift store, I came across this woven lampshade, brand new in the packaging for $2. And honestly, I needed it. I had a lamp at home that didn't have a shade, so this one just made sense and was such a great deal. And this wooden salad bowl was another one I almost brought home. I loved the scallop detail, and honestly, after watching the footage back, I kind of wish I had picked it up. But I have so many wooden bowls already, so it stayed. It's one of those pieces that can look completely different with the right styling. I also picked up a few pieces for future projects and videos, so you'll probably be seeing these again soon. This is something I've never done before. I actually grabbed a mystery bag for $5.99 because one of the pieces really caught my eye, but I wasn't expecting much from this, and I'll show you exactly what's in it when I get home. Next, I spotted a couple of pieces that just screamed gift potential. This heavy silver bread basket for $10 would be perfect for packaging a Mother's Day gift, a plant, or even used as a small tabletop display. And the vintage picnic basket for $6.99, I could immediately picture tucking in 2 bottles of champagne, some melamine plates, and a little charcuterie for a beautiful gift setup. I love finding pieces that can serve both function and style. It's those small touches that make giving feel thoughtful and elevated. Then I brought home this little mom and baby elephant statue for $3. It had a couple of chips and cracks, but I just couldn't resist it. When the trunk is up, it's supposed to represent good luck, prosperity, and positive energy, and it felt like a piece worth rescuing. At home, I gave it a quick clean and sprayed it first with some gold metallic paint and then a dusting of champagne bronze to tone down the color. Something as small as this can instantly add character and personality to a shelf or a tabletop. It's proof that thoughtful touches don't have to be complicated. And I always love taking a little time for the fabric sections. Blankets, scarves, tablecloths, and even little pillow finds. And these gauze-type scarves are one of my favorite tricks. They can be used anywhere you need to add a little softness. My favorite way to style them is as a runner on a table with lots of candles to make the perfect tablescape. And this was another one I kept thinking about. It was $1.99 and looked like it might be silver plated, and I was playing with it in store. You could pair it with a tray, a crystal plate, a small bowl, and create such a curated look. Pieces like this are so versatile, but there was only one, and if there had been two, I definitely would have brought them home. I also came across this IKEA wine rack, and I've been seeing people use these as towel holders lately, which is such a smart way to repurpose something simple. And this wicker file basket came home with me. It's so sturdy and substantial for the price. I love the color, and the flat top makes it really functional for storage or even styling. When I got it home, I gave it a couple of dunks in some hot water and some dish soap and disinfectant and left it dry on my washer. It's one of those pieces I can't wait to use. And then I found this piece that I genuinely could not figure out. I've looked it up and I still don't know exactly what it is. It could be decorative, it could be functional. I feel like it could hold papers, pictures, and maybe even be styled with a towel. But I'm curious, what do you think? Does anyone know what this is? Then there was this fun little vintage gold lame clutch. Pieces like this are so easy to style and are an unexpected surprise when displayed on a vanity or a dresser, a hook, or even just propped up on a small easel next to a tray of perfumes. Then this teal glass pitcher really stood out to me. It's actually from Pier 1, and it has that heavier cut glass feel that instantly makes it seem like a little more substantial. I didn't need it, but I could already picture it styled with tulips for spring or Easter, or even used as part of a gift, just adding fresh flowers and giving it as a vase. It's one of those pretty pieces that feels special, but is still really functional. And this wooden men's jewelry box was only $1, so I couldn't pass it up. It has that simple, solid feel, and I love that it has a clear front. It would be really pretty styled with something inside, or even hung on the wall as a small shadow box. This next one really caught my eye, and it's one of those pieces that might not stand out at first. I wouldn't use it as a purse though. I think it would look beautiful styled on a peg rail with some real touch tulips. It's one of those pieces that can add a lot of texture to a space. And I just want to take a moment to point out pieces like this. You see, thrift stores are such a good place to find little craft items for your stash, especially when they're only a couple of dollars. And this grapevine garland, for example, could make a beautiful spring wreath. I didn't pick it up though, since I already have my spring wreath. I also always look at easels when I see them, but this one was a little too bent and wobbly, and that's one of those things where it's better to leave it than try to make it work. I finally went through the mystery bag when I got home, and honestly, at first, I wasn't that impressed. The piece that had caught my eye, this vintage lipstick holder, was actually missing a stone. So I wasn't expecting much. But then I started looking things up, and some of the religious pieces were going for around $10 to $25 each, and there were quite a few of those in the bag. This little piece here is actually hand-carved soapstone, and I found similar ones selling anywhere from $50 to $95. So for $5.99, it ended up being worth around $130, which definitely made me want to go back and check the rest of them. I hope you enjoyed thrifting with me. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next Saturday.